Official policy, you're not allowed to know. Why?
What about this, what Putin's spokesman has said about the Times journalists? Have you heard about this story?
Oh, what's he said?
They've said that the Times journalists are legitimate military targets and they should be careful as anything goes in London. I mean, that's a declaration, that is. Listen, thank you very much indeed for listening. That's me done for 2024. We're off for the next couple of weeks. Kev is here from 7 o'clock. We're back with Plank of the Week, Plank of the Year, and I'll be here on Friday, but I can't tell you why yet. Ryan, we were never organising anything other than to say thank you for working with me. You're fired. Happy birthday. I'm joking. Mozzie's taking over. Have a great night. Kev is next, and then Petri. Stand by and goodbye.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum right here on Talk all the way to 10 o'clock. I am Kevin O'Sullivan and I'll be with you throughout 3 thrilling hours of news, views and topical debate. Get on the phone and call me on 03444991000. It's good to talk on Talk. Or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I promise to play your message out. Here's what's coming up. Find out all about the migrant hotels near you that the government won't tell you about. Why are British citizens kept in the dark about hundreds, sometimes thousands of asylum seekers shipped into their local areas? 03444991000. Also tonight, Labour's blatant betrayal of the WASPI women. Unclear Keir and Weasel Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall supported these ladies in their fight for pension compensation all the way. That was when they were in opposition. Now that they're in government, it's a very different story. In their wickedly deceitful election campaign, Starmer's stormtroopers lied and lied and lied. Can we ever trust this shocking bunch of shameless fibbers? 03444991000. In other news, Labour is plotting to change the law to block Elon Musk's inevitable colossal donation to Nigel Farage Reform UK Party. Do you reckon Keir and the gang are worried? If not, why not? They really are. 03444991000. Also, The strange story of the BBC and the traumatised coppers who policed the white working class summer riots. And the even stranger story of the rich, wealthy Central London Council promoting cheap, subsidised housing in one of Britain's most exclusive enclaves. In 5 languages. For this sought-after accommodation where property is sold for many millions, why prioritise non-English speakers? 0344499 1000. Plus air miles speaker Mr. Lindsay Hoyle's sky-high expenses, billing taxpayers more than, wait for it, he's Mr. Speaker, he's the guy who sits in that chair going, order, order, order. He has billed taxpayers more than £250,000, £250,000 for jetting round the world on 17 globe-trotting trips in just 2 years. He's the Speaker. What's he doing going around the world for £250,000 of our money? What's that all about? 0344499 1000. And finally, big surprise, Greg Wallace's replacement on MasterChef works for the BBC's Bible, The Guardian. And stay tuned for Kinsey Schofield's Royal Review of the Year. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now, at the home of free speech and common sense talk. Let's spend Wednesday night together. And right off the bat, let's go to my guest for the first hour. Really pleased to be joined by Talk's excellent international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Welcome, Isabel. Oh, look at you looking all Christmassy in the background. Merry Christmas to you. You know me, Mr. Grinch. Right, well, let's get going. This is something that you highlighted to me for sort of technical legal reasons. We can't really show this. But you and I have been sent a map. It's a map of Britain of all the asylum seeker hotels that are being used. Now, suffice to say that once you've got the little pin prick marks all around the country, you can't really see the country at all. It is just a mass of little markers saying this is where the migrant hotels are. Now, we believe there are something like 250. It's difficult to actually hone in on the accurate figures here because the government keeps them very secret. But we believe there are an estimated 250 hotels have been taken over by the government for the purpose of accommodating asylum seekers and basically illegal migrants. There are 35,651 opportunist foreigners at the moment in such residences. They're staying in hotels at great expense to us, £5.5 million every single night. Now, the thing is, Isabel, you know, as British citizens, if I live in an area, surely I ought to have I ought to know that suddenly 100 or 500 asylum seekers, foreigners, have been billeted in my local hotel. Sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes it's several hotels. Now, the government has an official policy not to tell us. We are not allowed to know whether or not there are asylum seekers staying in hotels near us. You try to find that information out, the government will tell you we do not hand that information out. We've been in touch with the Home Office. Why is that? It's to protect the migrants and the asylum seekers. So their welfare is more important to the government than the right of British citizens to know who's living in their area. This is extraordinary.
It is indeed, and I'm very sorry. First of all, let me issue an apology to our listeners and our viewers that we can't, here on Talk, actually publish this map because I think it is a very wonderful thing. We can't do it because we don't quite know what the consequences would be for us as a broadcasting station and me and you, Kev, as journalists, of putting that information in the public domain. Unfortunately, events recently in which journalists have had a knock at the door from the police for tweeting or putting on social media much less controversial information don't really inspire confidence, to the point that I think that if you or I were to put this out there, we could absolutely expect to face some kind of criminal consequences for, I don't know, inciting hatred or some such. And of course, that's not at all what we would be doing in sharing this information. What we would be doing is showing the British taxpayer how and where their money is being spent, and what communities, people from overseas whose paperwork and identities we are far from sure of, are living in. And I don't think that is remotely unreasonable. Generally, word spreads pretty quickly, doesn't it, in an area if a hotel has suddenly been taken over for these purposes. But the map is very interesting because it shows you where places are clustered. And in fact, a colleague of mine spent yesterday in Cardiff, and you and I, Kev, were talking a week or so ago about...
City of the migrant village. The non-migrant village, I'm sorry.
Exactly. So we went back to Cardiff to talk and see how many rough sleepers there are there, given that the council there has created an entire multi-squillion pound new village, supposedly, for the homeless. And suffice to say that there are an awful lot of people sleeping rough on the streets who one might have thought would have been offered this accommodation. Meanwhile, there's not one, not two, but 3 migrant hotels in that area. So while British people who've lived all their lives in this country, and whether or not they've paid into the system, they need the support of the state, are rough sleeping on the streets in the freezing cold in the run-up to this Christmas, those who have just come from overseas are being given comfortable and in some cases borderline luxurious accommodation in taxpayer-funded hotels. Personally, I think that is deeply wrong, and never has there been more of a case for charity beginning at home.
Absolutely. Now, we got in touch with the Home Office about this. I mean, folks, just get this straight. It is official government policy that you shall not know. You are not allowed to know that there are asylum seekers being billeted in hotels near you, that your local hotel that maybe you used to go for a drink to or have a meal in, you know, the hub of the community has now got 400 migrants in it. You're not allowed to know this. The government has an official policy to keep us, British citizens, in the dark about this. This is what the Home Office said to us, Isabel and everybody else, over the phone today. We need to protect the asylum seekers. We are safeguarding them. That is the reason we are not sharing the locations to the public. The spokesman went on to tell us here at Talk that this was a non-story and we had no angle. Well, I'm afraid we do have an angle, and that is that I believe, and I think you agree with me, Isabel, that the citizens of this country have a right to know that 400 foreigners have suddenly moved in just down the road. They went on to say that the riots over the summer is an example of what happens when people have this information. They told us it was a non-story, and then over an email, a Home Office spokesman told this programme, the Political Asylum, this government inherited an asylum system under unprecedented strain, with thousands stuck in a backlog without their claims processed, housed in expensive accommodation. Well, one of the missions of this great Labour government of ours was to significantly reduce the use of hotels. And only this week, earlier in the week, we said, hey, we've done it. We've reduced the number of hotels by 7. There are 250 at least.
Wow.
Yeah, but check it out. What they failed to mention when they said this was they'd also commandeered separately 14 more. So the net result was they've increased the number of hotels they're using by 7. But I think the scandal here is, I'd love to know what people think about this, that our government, the government of British citizens has a policy to prioritise safeguarding foreigners, most of whom arrived here illegally, most of whom are lying. They say, we're economic, we're fleeing war and torture, most of whom who are young men. They have a policy to prioritise their safety over our safety. It's an issue of safety to know whether or not there are 400 foreigners living down the road. It's outrageous.
How dare the Home Office preach to us about what is and isn't a story? I'll do my job and they can do theirs. Theirs is safeguarding the British people and controlling our borders. They have manifestly failed on both of those. My job and yours, Kev, is to bring news to the British people. And I think we'll judge what is and isn't a story. And in my view, it is a story where these migrant hotels are located and the fact that the government wishes to cover that up. And whether or not it's what they consider a story, it's certainly a matter for interesting debate, isn't it? Because, you know, you and I can probably also see the other side of the argument. You know, we saw that there were ugly scenes this summer outside migrant hotels, and none of us want that. I actually don't want the migrant hotels to be there at all, because I don't think that that is a system. But I don't want to see horrible riots and protests and people trying to cause any damage to buildings, and still worse, try to damage people inside those hotels. But what happens when you cover things up and you hide information is that it actually inflames situations. So I don't think it's helpful for information to come out piecemeal, for things to be covered up. I think that that actually sows division and fuels mistrust and actually is quite counterproductive. I would also like to say that yesterday our researcher actually tried to get into some of these migrant hotels, not in any illegitimate way, literally knocking at the door, can we speak to some staff? Nothing improper in that. That's what journalists should do. And the hostility and aggression that they encountered, not only from clusters of I suppose, what the Home Office would call clients, i.e. migrants staying there, but also from the staff on the doors of these buildings, was quite extraordinary. I mean, it's entirely legitimate for journalists to ask questions, to say, hello, just wondering how, you know, what's going on here and so on. And actually, you know, doors are shut in faces, people shout, don't you dare film anything, and so on and so forth. And I just think all of this is very, very unhealthy. And I pity people who have these facilities in the heart of their communities, because I don't think that it's well managed, and I don't think that it creates any sense of community cohesion. I think what it creates is resentment, and no wonder when you see people rough sleeping just streets away.
Yeah, and this feeds into Keir Starmer's approach to government. He infantilises us. In the summer, him, the police, the authorities did not trust the British public with the information that there was a terrorist connection to those terrible murders in the Southport dance hall. There was a terrorist connection. The suspect is now charged with possession of an Al-Qaeda military manual and manufacturing ricin poison. We weren't allowed to know that for 3 months. So they don't trust us with this kind of information because they think, I think they suspect we're all far-right thugs, as Keir Starmer liked to portray those rioters during the summer, and that if we get this information, if we know there's a hotel full of asylum seekers down the road, we'll start rioting and trying to set fire to that hotel, which I think is an insult to the great British public.
Well, of course it is, because the vast majority of people, whatever their reservations about having, people that come over the channel in this very, very irresponsible and dangerous way, put up in semi-luxury, at taxpayers' expense, whatever the reservations of most people about that, and I have the deepest of reservations. I'm not going to go out there and start screaming profanities and hurling abuse and, trying to torch these premises. The vast majority of people in this country are both generous and tolerant and law-abiding. So don't insult them and their intelligence by saying, well, you know, you're not grown up or responsible enough to know who is living in your area and what's going on. We are talking about very, very, very large sums of taxpayer money here. And I think, personally, I think there is a right to know. But I recognise that people will have other views on this. And I think it's a really interesting debate. And I'm sure, you know, maybe one or two of our listeners will come on and say, actually, it's too dangerous. People will have other views to you and I, Kev. But I think it's entirely legitimate for us to discuss it. And for the Home Office to say there's nothing to see here, folks moves on, you know, just jog on by, there's nothing to talk about here, betrays such a lack of understanding about how voters are feeling at this point.
Yeah, and it also feeds into the fact Keir Starmer and his government, his left-wing Labour government, they don't really like Britain, they don't really like British people, they're prioritising foreigners over us because they don't trust us, they don't like us. And by the way, just before we move on, listen to let's reiterate that Home Office spokesperson. Right, listen to this. This is by email. This government inherited an asylum system under unprecedented strain, with thousands stuck in a backlog without their claims processed, housed in expensive accommodation. That is a politically charged statement on behalf of the Labour Party. This is supposed to be the civil service. This is supposed to be the unbiased civil Home Office. They're just acting for the Labour Party. It's outrageous.
Yeah, actually, you make a really good point. They're supposed to be neutral, aren't they? That's a very unseemly statement there. And you said it was backed up by verbal stuff about no story here, you know, what are you talking about kind of thing. I'm afraid that just gives you a glimpse of the reality of the makeup of the civil service more widely. You know, it is institutionally left-leaning, and we see that time and again with their little protests about implementing Conservative government policy and really quite serious pushback on everything from the fundamentals of Brexit to other policies that they disagree with and think that they have some kind of entitlement to reject. You know, that's not what they sign up for when they become civil servants. If they don't like it, well, then become politicians. The two things are different jobs.
And by the way, let's just finish on a bit of my prejudice. So if these Home Office spokespeople want to be prejudiced about us and say, yeah, this is a non-story, you don't know what you do, this is what happens when people have this, this is a non-story. Well, I'll tell you what, a Home Office spokesperson, Isabel and I, we're journalists. We'll tell you what a story is, because if you knew what a story was, you wouldn't be working as a spokesperson for the bloody Home Office. You'd have a better job, OK? Time to move on. Next up, let's talk about the WASPI women. Stay where you are.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Right, let's talk about the WASPI women. These are women who were born in the 1950s, who, when they changed the pension rules, originally in 1995, so I think I'm right in saying that would have been the Labour government, and then again in 2011, basically women were aligned with men, so they used to get their pension at the age of 60, and for sexist reasons, men didn't get theirs until the age of 65, so they moved the women to 65 as well, which of course is only right in an equal, egalitarian society. Anyway, 3.8 million of these women say that they didn't really know about this, their retirement plans were completely ruined, and they've been campaigning for compensation ever since. Now, during their original campaigns, guess who's supporting them? Labour. Particularly Keir Starmer and Liz Kendall, the current Work and Pensions Secretary, calling on the Tories to do the right thing and do it fast, and so on and so forth. Well, now they're in government, two-tier Keir, unclear Keir, and weasel Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall have completely changed their minds. They no longer support the women, and they say, we can't afford it. It costs us £10.5 billion, so you can whistle for it. Now, this is typical of Labour. What they said during their campaigns in opposition, take it with a pinch of salt. They don't care what they say, as long as you like them for 5 minutes. Then, when pinch comes to shove, they'll change their minds, like they have now. So, Isabel, I mean, can we trust a single word that these Labour people say?
No.
It's outrageous.
This is just everything, isn't it? You know, from one policy to the next, they're doing the opposite of what they led us to believe they would do. I'm a bit sort of unsure where I stand on the WASPI women. I mean, they've clearly run a very effective campaign to highlight the way they feel that they've been sort of mistreated. At the same time, you know, this story was all over the news at the time about the adjustments in the age cut-off point. Must have been pretty hard to miss, and they had some 15 years of notice. So I don't think they're top of my own kind of list of priorities of people that need help. But it is one thing if Labour indicated that they would support these women, and now perhaps some of those affected voted for Labour on that basis, and now they find out that that was not worth the paper it was written on, or probably not written on. It's just another insight into this absolutely mendacious regime.
I'm glad you said mendacious there, Isabel, because here's mendacious Keir in action. Check this out.
A WASP woman dies every 13 minutes. That's 2 since the Prime Minister took to the dispatch box today. That's 111 every day, and nearly 17,000 since he took office. So can I ask the Prime Minister, how many more WASP women have to die before the government takes action to give them the financial redress and the justice that they are due?
Mr. Speaker, we are moving at pace on all relevant issues. We've passed the budget to provide the baseline for what we need, and will continue to do so.
Yeah, and back in the campaign, when he was in opposition, he just said that the government should, which was a Tory government, should be fair and fast and hand all of these women £3,000 compensation. You're right. I mean, first of all, some of these Labour morons, because they've only got, they're like parrots. They go, it's the Tories, it's their fault, we inherited this. Actually, no, you, Labour, started this. What we're talking about was maladministration. The government then did admit maladministration insofar as they did not put the WASPI women in the picture enough. So in the end, you're quite right. What we're talking about is women who were confused about the changing rules and were thrown into disarray because they felt they didn't have enough information. But it's not really about their case about how much they deserve this money. It's about the fact that Labour, foursquare. There's Keir with the WASPI women when he was in opposition. There's Angela Rayner with the WASPI women. Foursquare behind the WASPI women. Come on, you evil Tories, give them the £3,000. Now they're in government, you can't have it. I mean, they are so duplicitous, such liars. And I think that their election campaign, their deceitful, wickedly deceitful election campaign will change the face of politics in this country forever, because never again will the electorate trust parties with their manifestos. Everybody now feels that political manifestos, certainly on the part of Labour, are just a pack of lies.
And this is awful, actually. And I think that, you know, much as I don't want to be fair to Labour, they're hardly exclusively guilty on this front. I mean, look what the Tories did, most notably on immigration, promising repeatedly one thing and delivering the precise opposite. You know, look what the Lib Dems did notoriously years ago when they stood on a platform of no tuition fees and then proceeded to support the introduction of tuition fees. No wonder there is such anger out there towards politicians. No wonder politicians are held in such ill regard. And this is why the Reform Party chose not to use the word manifesto at the last election and actually characterised it as a contract with the people. And perhaps this is a direction that we're going to need to go, and other parties may embrace something similar, whereby actually they say this is what we are pledging to deliver and you must hold us accountable to this in much the same way as you would if it were a legally binding document. Now, we don't know whether the Reform Party would have ever been able to honour every bit of their contract. Perhaps voters would have ended up, had Reform somehow become the government, would have ended up trying to kind of sue them for breaches of contract. But at least there was a recognition there of the spirit of things and an acknowledgement that trust has fallen to such a low in manifestos that they're barely worth reading, really, are they? Because they actually, if anything, are just give you a sense of what are the policy areas, no real sense of what a government once in power is actually going to do.
Now, just before we move on, I'm going off piste here a bit, but there is a song that is on course to be #1, the Christmas #1 single, and it's called It's Gonna Be Cold This Christmas. It's a spoof on that Mud hit back in 1974, I think it was. I was only in my 50s during those days, so I was quite a young guy then. You know, the one where it'll be cold this Christmas, freezing this Christmas, it's called. Lest you ever doubt it, the BBC always fawns to the government, always fawns to the royal family, but it particularly fawns to the British government when it's a Labour government. First of all, let's have a little listen to the song, shall we?
It'll be freezing this Christmas while our money goes abroad. It'll be freezing this Christmas. Rachel Reeves is a fraud. It'll be cold, so cold, without fuel at home this Christmas.
It's brilliant, and I think it fully deserves to be #1, but of course it follows in the footsteps of a long and dishonourable list of hit songs that the BBC has declined to play. #1 records often. The BBC always goes very prudish and Victorian about various pop songs. You remember Sex Pistols, God Save the Queen, we can't have the Queen insulted. Frankie Goes to Hollywood, relax, too sexual. The Beatles, A Day in the Life, references to drugs, and so on and so forth. It's ridiculous. Anyway, they're not playing this. They refuse to play this, and they say decisions on what we play are always made with the relevant audiences and context in mind. They should play this. People are loving it, and it's going to be #1.
Well, I think the best riposte to that is for as many people as possible to download this song, just, if anything, just to show the BBC that we're not going to be, our political views are not going to be shaped and influenced by their very obviously political decisions not to publicise or promote this song. So maybe everyone can get together and throw their weight behind it and make the BBC look ever more ridiculous.
And I believe that the band are called the Granny Harmer Starmers. I think the idea is very, very clear. If this is number one, we better move on. But just to make this clear, it's all very funny, and it's a very funny song. The lyrics are hilarious and very poignant, to the point. If this is number one at Christmas, trust that is a serious embarrassment for this government. So go. Let's make it number one, folks. Go and buy it. Maybe we'll even get the BBC to play it. Next up, Isabel, a story that I know you'll be very interested in. This is just broken. Now, I was just going to talk to you about, well, old Elon Musk. He's obviously going to give Reform UK, you know, Nigel Farage and the gang a load of money. They've just been to Mar-a-Lago. Nick Candy, the new Reform treasurer, pictured with Musk or with Nigel. The money forthcoming. Guess what's just broken this afternoon? The Labour government are plotting to bring in a law that will make it allegedly impossible for foreigners like Mr. Musk to donate to British political parties. Do you think they're worried? Stay tuned. We'll resume this story in just a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now, let's talk about, well, the story of the week. It kind of broke, I think, a couple of weeks ago in the Sunday papers. Reform UK trying to sort of play it down and say, oh, it's just the Sunday papers making up stories again. But the word is, Isabel, that Elon Musk, you know, having donated $2 million a week, $200 million in all to Donald Trump, he's a playmaker. He was a playmaker in the Trump triumph. I think he feels that with his money he can help shape politics, change politics for the better. I think he has succeeded in America, and I think he's set his sights on Britain too. He worries about Keir Starmer. He loves this country. He doesn't like what Starmer's doing to it. Who does? Hopefully he is going to make a big donation to Nigel Farage and the Reform's new Treasurer, Nick Candy, the billionaire property developer. As we can see, there they are meeting at Mar-a-Lago at Donald Trump's place yesterday, I believe it was. Now, I hope they get that money. I hope he really does give them a lot of money because, as you and I have discussed before, Reform UK, with money, considerable amount of money and organisation, I think will change the face of politics in this country. And Labour are crapping themselves quite clearly, because don't forget, I believe I'm right in saying that Reform UK was second in 98 seats that Labour won, and they were pretty close. Now, they are worried. And guess what? There's a story just broken in the Times this afternoon, which I think is disgusting and disgraceful, that the Labour government is now plotting to bring in a law that they think might prevent Elon Musk being able to donate any money to Reform UK. That must not happen, in my view.
Well, I think that will be very difficult for Labour, and very obviously an initiative that is born out of panic. After all, Labour, like the Tories and like the Lib Dems, has itself benefited over the years from very substantial donations from individuals, billionaires and so on, who are based overseas. I'm just looking at a list here and a couple of examples. Lakshmi Mittal, Britain's second richest man, the steel tycoon, gave more than 5 million to Labour up to April 2010. He was domiciled abroad for tax purposes. Then there was Lord Noon, the Curry King, Bombay-born businessman. He gave 1 million to Labour. He was a non-dom as well. There was an Egyptian-born businessman, Sir Ronald Cohen, who gave 2.55 million, and so on and so forth. The Lib Dems have also benefited, and there's a long list of similar who have donated to the Conservatives. So this is pretty desperate stuff, isn't it? Nonetheless, there'd be nothing to stop Elon Musk, if he wanted to, crack on with it before any such new law comes into force. And there's no limits on spending outside election periods. I mean, there are quite strict rules around what you can and can't do during campaigns, but, you know, a party is free to lavish as much as it wants on campaigning and building infrastructure and building a party machine. Everything has to be declared. There are very, very clear rules around all of that. But you know what? Reform UK doesn't need a fraction of this money to transform politics. Reform UK is brilliant at making a disproportionate impact with very small amounts of resources. So whilst I'm sure the party would be delighted to have any such donation, I think it can transform politics even without a absolutely gargantuan donation of the type that is being speculated about.
I'll tell you what, I wouldn't mind playing poker against Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner, because they're not very good at covering up their inner feelings, are they? This is blatant. It's obvious. They are, as I said eloquently, crapping themselves. Reform UK are on the rise, and they are biting at Labour's heels, and they are the opposition at the moment, because I have no idea what Kemi Badenoch is doing, apart from being very quiet and not being very good at opposition. Just before we move on, Isabel, just a quick word, I don't want to overdwell on it, but the House of Lords, if you remember, another one of Keir Starmer's bold election pledges. I will abolish that House of Privilege. I will abolish the House of Lords. He's all set to appoint 30 new Labour Lords, one of whom, I guess she won't be a Lord, she'll be a Baroness or whatever you call them, will be that ludicrous woman Sue Gray, who keeps getting promoted upwards despite disgraceful failure at everything she does. But, you know, I just feel, this is my view, here's a way to make politics less disgusting to look at for the public. Take away the power of patronage from prime ministers and party leaders. Ban them from being able to appoint people to the House of Lords. It is blatant corruption. He wants to appoint 30 new Labour peers, insiders telling us, to swing the upper chamber his way. It's disgusting.
It is so grotesque. I absolutely hate it. The system is so systematically abused. I mean, I actually like the concept of an upper chamber of brilliant people with special expertise in different areas, you know, very different type of qualification, perhaps, to becoming a member of the House of Lords than you have for being an MP. I think that can add a lot, you know, people who are quite manifestly exceptional in whatever their area it may be, whether it's in medicine or science or, you know, town planning, whatever it may be. Unfortunately, the Lords is just stuffed full of cronies. There are some brilliant experts, but unfortunately, there are an awful lot of political placement, people who've been rewarded for total mediocrity. And there are such disgraceful examples of this from every administration recently. This is not just a Labour thing, though it's worth remembering that it's the Labour Party that led efforts many years ago basically to totally transform and reform the House of Lords. Now all they seem to be interested in is getting rid of the remaining hereditaries and replacing any vacant seats with their own placement. It's awful.
And by the way, Boris Johnson was a shocker for this as well. This isn't really necessarily just against Labour. They all do this. But Starmer, the thing about Starmer and this Labour lot is that they had no concept of the fact, you know, even in opposition, be a bit careful what you say, be a bit careful what you promise. Because what they did, they kept going, oh, I promise you I'll do this, I'll abolish the House of Lords, I promise I'll help the WASPI women, I promise I won't get rid of the winter fuel allowance, and then they do it. And people have long memories, and that's why Starmer is by far and away the least popular Prime Minister we've ever had. 61% of people in a recent poll this week, a couple of days ago in the Daily Mail, said they can't stand this guy. They think he's the worst Prime Minister this country has ever had. Luckily, we don't have to put up with him very often because he's always abroad, never here. He's been in... Nobody needs to go to Norway and Estonia, least of all our Prime Minister. What is he doing? He's back now, so stand by for more trouble, no doubt. When we come back, Isabel, we're going to talk about policing those riots. I'm going to put something to you that I find kind of interesting. I think you might too. So that next, stay where you are.
let's be clear. Elon Musk loves the United Kingdom, the home of English-speaking nations. He's got serious business interests here, whether it's X, whether it's Tesla, whether it's Starlink, and he wants the United Kingdom to do well. He wants our economy to grow, and he recognises that Labour's a catastrophe and that Britain needs reform in every sense, and that's why he's been speaking to Nigel, met our new Treasurer, Nick Candy, and, you know, he's put out there on X that, you know, we've got to turn this country around. We've got to reform our country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Isabel, let's talk about the summer riots, the white working class riots that Keir Starmer and all the establishment would have as far-right thugs. It was far-right. They weren't protests. They were protests. They were protests against our migrant crisis. Now, the police watchdog has found a big surprise that the police, the cops, weren't prepared for these uprisings, for these riots. They said that they had missed opportunities to be ready for the widespread disorder involving... This is the Chief Inspector of Constabulary, a guy called Andy Cook. He said that it was clear cops missed opportunities to be ready for widespread disorder involving, and I quote, extreme nationalist sentiment, close quotes. Now, this feeds into something I saw, a weird report on the BBC News last Friday. Happened to watch this. Well, let me just put it was basically coppers talking about their experience.
Say something about a heart. We heard someone say something about a heart attack. When this was happening, we were in the middle of one of the streets, like fighting again with our shields and going forward and having things thrown at us.
My mind had gone, I would say, for that short period of time.
That night I went home, I couldn't sleep at all, and I couldn't sleep, and I didn't know if he was dead or alive or...
These are the people that draw everything out of the community, draw the life and soul out of the community, give nothing but take everything. The people that commit the antisocial behaviour, the hardcore element of this disruptive group were them people.
How do you describe them?
Personally, parasites.
I didn't sleep for months after. Couldn't sleep.
I went on holiday with my family. I think it was probably day 2 or day 3. I just felt as though I just sort of hit the floor, if you like. Felt as though I could have just broke down, to be honest.
So, that's a BBC News exclusive last Friday, right, Isabel? These are coppers telling us about how traumatised they were dealing with these far-right thugs, these antisocial people who are parasites on society. Oh, don't we hate them, we hate them, we hate them. You don't get coppers on the telly telling about their traumatic experiences policing ethnic riots, do you? You know, Hare Hills in Leeds that you know a lot about, Birmingham, the Muslim riots, Leicester. We don't see them talking about the trauma of policing them. This is propaganda. This is the BBC and the police making sure that we are aware that the most antisocial, dangerous people in the world were those white working class rioters. They were far-right thugs, of course. Well, you know, nobody condones their methods. Nobody condones what they did. It was horrible. You know, you can't go around trying to set fire to migrant hotels, throw bricks at coppers, you know, attack mosques. You can't do that. That is wrong. However, the demonisation of these people continues apace. This was the weirdest thing I've seen on telly for a long time. Coppers, I couldn't sleep for months. Oh, I was traumatised. I don't know what I saw. You know, weird, don't you think?
I think it's jaw-dropping, actually. I'd go further. I mean, the police are not allowed to speak out about this kind of thing. As you say, when did you last hear them talking about their trauma of policing some ugly pro-Hamas protest, or, you know, anti-Semitic stuff, or their trauma of, as you say, policing those absolutely disgraceful riots in Hare Hills in Leeds, which are predominantly by one community. We don't hear them talking about how awful that was and how, you know, the sleepless nights that they're now suffering. And, you know, for an illustration of the grotesquely distorted approach to what happened over the summer, look no further than the way in which the young woman who threw, I think it was a milkshake at Nigel Farage, escaped any kind of custodial sentence.
Disgrace.
You know, when there are others who simply tweeted and reported on bad things that were happening, that have been thrown into jail for long periods. I mean, you know, I know that Mr. Farage finds these sorts of attacks really genuinely frightening, not because he isn't an extremely tough person, but because he lives day in, day out with the threat of actual murder by crazy people. And when someone lunges at you with an unknown liquid, you know, how do you know that it's not acid or something equally dangerous and corrosive and potentially life-threatening? Oh, but somehow, because it's Nigel Farage, you know, the leader of Reform UK, that's all right. You know, you escape with a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
You know, this sort of stuff massively undermines public trust in policing. And now would be our moment, Kev, to come back to that whole thing. Why have those Manchester airport thugs not been charged?
Yeah, I want to wish them, I mean, they're Muslims, so they won't celebrate Christmas, but I do want to wish them a very happy Christmas and a Merry New Year. I'm sure that they're going to enjoy another year of freedom the way the Crown Prosecution Service is going on. It's an absolute scandal. Come on! This July the 23rd... all caught on film, still no charges. Either charge them or tell us, the British public, you know, the British public that you so love to keep in the dark, that you're going to drop the case. One or the other. Don't just let it trundle on. But to go back to that weird, those coppers talking about not being able to sleep and the trauma and the parasitic far-right thugs and all that, that's thought control. That is the BBC working with the police, with the approval of the government, to make sure we're all thinking the right thing about those summer riots, that they were not protests, they were far-right thugs. Well, you know, as I say, nobody condones their method of protesting, but they were protests. They were protests about the migrant crisis, and as you just alluded to, we're not allowed, actually, to be angry about the migrant crisis. We have to be angry about far-right thugs. That's what the government wants us to do. That's what the police wants us to do. That's what the establishment wants us to do. Those reports, those coppers, I've never seen anything like it. That was choreographed rubbish. Thought control, propaganda, that's what that was.
It was indeed, and I believe that the majority of people who took part in those riots were not far-right thugs. They were misguided, many of them were ignorant, and they behaved badly. But I think that these were ordinary people who perceive that their quality of life is being adversely affected by the diversion of resources to migrants and people who have given nothing to this country whilst arriving illegally by boat. That's how they feel, the people that took part in the riots. And the way they behaved is not good and it's not acceptable, and we don't condone it. But to just dismiss it in the way the government did as far-right thuggery is to fail to understand a groundswell of opinion in communities up and down this country, that they are being deprioritised for the allocation of all sorts of resources, and indeed that the safety of their communities is being threatened by those who don't necessarily support our way of life. That's what they fear, that's what they feel. They might be wrong about that, but they are not necessarily terrible people.
Totally right. Isabel, listen, thank you very much for all your brilliant contributions to this show throughout the year. Very happy Christmas. We'll be back in just a little while.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is the second hour of tonight's Political Asylum. In just a little while, I'm going to be asking why it is that the Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, Labour guy, of course, they love their titles, those Labour MPs, he's billed taxpayers more than £250,000 for jetting around the globe in just 2 years. He recently racked up a massive bill to go to the Cayman Islands in July for 5 days. £22,785 that cost the taxpayer. 5 days. It's a parliamentary business, you know, looking at the way the Cayman Islands do their parliamentary business. You know, he's the Speaker. Why is he flying around the world and costing us $250,000? He sits in a chair and goes, order, order. Anyway, we'll come on to that story in just a little while. A lot of freebies going on in Parliament that we pay for. MPs always going off on these fact-finding jaunts. Eating, drinking, enjoying foreign places. That's what they're all about. Maybe we should stop paying for it. How do you think? Right, before we get to that, though... well, listen, I'm going to talk about... this is Westminster Council. It's in central London, right? In Westminster Council, you have, you know, definitively the most expensive property in the land. Really, really expensive. I mean, millions of... 5 million quid for a house here, 8 million quid for a house there, 25 million for a mansion there. This is how much houses and accommodation costs in the Westminster Council area. It's central London. The average monthly rent there is £3,183. Now, Westminster City Council is offering property, subsidised property, basically council housing, to everyone for as little as £624 a month. So good deal if you can get it. So they're trying to make it clearer and fairer for everybody who lives in the area, who might want to live in the area, how they can get hold of this subsidised council housing, how they, you know. Anyway, here they are making it clear to the residents, to people who might want to live in Westminster Council. Take it away. Let's have a listen.
We're changing the way we allocate social housing in Westminster. We want to make it more transparent and help people with the greatest need.
And here they are, making it much more helpful and much clearer.
نقوم في بلدية وستمنستر حالياً بتغيير طريقة عمل.
আমরা জানাতাম স্যার যে ওয়েস্টমিনস্টার কাউন্সিল আমরা হাউজিং রেজিস্টার সিস্টেমরে বদলাইতাম.
Estamos cambiando la manera en que asignamos la vivienda social en Westminster.
Nous changeons la manière dont nous attribuons les logements sociaux à Westminster.
Well, there you go. So that's making it clear in 5 languages, British, of course, English, if you like, Arabic, Bengali, Spanish and French. It makes you wonder how integration is going, doesn't it? I mean, why are people who speak foreign languages being prioritised over people who speak English? Why does a council need to spend so much money translating simple messages? By the way, all around the country, we spend a fortune translating the legal system, the NHS. There are more than 1 million people in this country who are residents, many of them citizens, who don't speak English. This seems to me rather wrong. Let's talk to Senior Advisor at the Policy Exchange, Dr. Rakib Ahsan. Welcome, Rakib.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for joining us. Well, first of all, let's talk about this linguistic element. Now, you know, more than 1 million people in this country don't speak English. And these are residents, these are citizens, these are whole communities of adults who've lived here all their lives, do not speak English. You know, I don't want to sound, I mean, you know, this is the sort of area where people say, oh, you're being racist and all that. Well, it's not that. I think if you're going to live in this country, I'm not even demanding you take on our customs, our traditions, our religions, not that. But I think we ought to maybe demand that you can speak the language. Would that be a good start?
Oh, no, absolutely. I think that it's important. I think it's probably the most important ingredient of a responsible immigration system. That at the heart of it, level of English language proficiency should be at the heart and centre of that, in my view, because it facilitates economic, cultural and social integration. And I think, in my view, if you have such a high rate of foreign-born dependency on the welfare state, and that includes social housing, then it's very clear that our immigration system in modern times has not been attracting the brightest and the best in the wider global economy. So I think that what this really shows is how do we move forwards in terms of having a more responsible immigration system and also a more responsible asylum system as well, because I think both of them need to have integration at the heart of it.
I mean, our local authorities as well, particularly in the urban areas, the city areas like London, I think that they should, you know, perhaps stop pandering quite so much to people often who just haven't bothered to learn the language. And interestingly, possibly significantly, Westminster Council, having posted this video, took it down. They took it down. So they said, we need to have another look at this. But they went on to say, we provide translations into commonly spoken languages to ensure anyone entitled to apply for social housing is able to understand and follow the process. Again, you know, arguably you're in sensitive territory here, but a lot of people would say, particularly English-speaking locals who live in the Westminster Council area, why are you prioritising these people who can't speak English over people who can speak English?
No, absolutely. And it'll reinforce the view that we have a great number of what I'd consider to be welfare-dependent migrants who cannot speak English particularly well. And I think that's a fundamental failure of our immigration system and integration policy as well. It's been known for some time when it comes to social housing in London, the lead tenant in that social housing stock, nearly half, I believe around 47 to 48%, is someone who was born outside of the UK. And I think that, once again, what that truly demonstrates is that we have an immigration system which doesn't prioritise people who can develop self-sufficiency in the UK once they relocate here. And I think that's something that really needs to change, especially when it comes to social cohesion. Because I think that if there's a perception that ultimately the welfare state is increasingly providing for those who can't speak English very well, indeed people who have recently arrived here. But a real problem here is that we have people who have been here for some time, indeed a number of decades, who simply haven't developed a very strong level when it comes to having command of the English language. And I think that is a very serious problem, especially from a community solidarity perspective.
Just to give you a few statistics here, NHS trusts are estimated to spend something, from 2019 to 2020, 2021 to 22, so a couple of years ago, they spent 114 million pounds on interpreters and translation services for people who couldn't speak English. In our legal system, we spent 60 million translating, for example, from Akan to Zulu. 60 million pounds we spent translating for foreign people charged with offences.
In terms of understanding the legal documents and all the rest of it.
Yeah, but in foreign languages, they had to be...
Exactly, that is the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, many people would argue, Kevin, really, how are these kind of characters, what are they doing in the UK to begin with? That would be the big one.
There is that, but also the Department of Work and Pensions, they're spending £27 million a year translating. The point is, Rakib, Westminster Council approving it, that I think as a nation and again, we're not being racist here. The people who want to live here, I'm not saying go to the Church of England, support your local football team, be like, be English. I'm saying, at the very least, speak the language, because culturally I think that's very important, but also it's costing you, me and every British taxpayer one hell of a lot of money that these people can't speak English.
And absolutely, it's the single largest barrier to integration, economically, socially, culturally, and also the point that you make there civically as well. You can't truly integrate yourself into a new local community, in my view, unless, of course, that community is segregated. And I think that's also part of the problem. We have very intense forms of residential segregation, which means that people can actually get by in a way, in terms of not being able to speak English very well. And they're also able to get by because, as you say, we have these high-cost translation services, whether that's for the judicial system, the National Health Service, interacting with police forces as well, and also the Department of Work and Pension in terms of accessing benefits and also social housing. So I think that what we have here, we have a very serious problem in terms of, really, there are far too many people who have entered the UK in recent times who simply don't have the level of English language proficiency which enables successful integration and doesn't really allow them to build self-sufficiency, which I think that is a very huge problem.
Very interesting, don't you think, that having posted this video to help all of their various non-English speakers, that Westminster Council took it down. Its spokesperson said the council complies with the national criteria for allocating council homes to our local residents, prioritising those with the greatest need. Well, looking at this, the people they're prioritising are the people who don't speak English.
Well, I think that the footage there suggests that may well be the case. And I think that really can create social tensions between different communities. I think that in recent times, it's something that we've talked about in our previous conversations, Kevin, that there is that two-tier governance. And I actually say that I'd actually call it post-national governance, where, in my view, increasingly established British citizens are not being prioritised the way they should be. But I'd also make this point. We're talking about foreign-born people. Foreign-born people can include British nationals. I actually think that the big story here is that we have migrant communities, or elements of migrant communities, that have lived here for decades in segregated sections of our population who have not learned the language at all. And of course, if you don't learn the language, that will limit the degree to which you can integrate economically and socially. But there's also cultural attitudes within those communities which are quite anti-integration. They're not actually willing to integrate. And I think that needs to be part of the conversation as well.
Can I just, before you go, thanks so much for joining you,
my pleasure.
And always a pleasure to have you on the show. And while we're at it, compliments of the season and all that. Earlier in the show, we kind of broke this story. We've spoken to the Home Office. It feeds into what we're talking about. The government and the Home Office has an official policy that you, me, anybody, we as British citizens, we are not allowed to know if there is a migrant hotel in our area. There is an official system where we are refused that information. We are not allowed to know because the government feels that we might stage far-right riots should we get that information. Now, I would suggest that the government, this is what I'm really talking about, two-tier government. The government owes it to British citizens to give them this information. You know, if you've got 400 foreigners, asylum seekers, suddenly taking over your local hotel, I don't think it should be government policy that we're not allowed to know that, do you?
No, in fact, I think those local communities should be part of a consultation process and they should be treated as key stakeholders. And ultimately, without their agreement, I don't think that, quite often they're being referred to as asylum seekers. In my view, a significant proportion will be illegal migrants, illegal economic migrants, in my view. And I think many working class deprived communities across the country, they've ultimately been treated as dumping grounds when it comes to the small boats emergency. And I think that's a real shame, and I think that will create considerable social tensions, because many of those communities we're referring to, Kevin, they've been underinvested. They've gone underinvested for decades. And then when they see, in my view, illegal migrants being rehomed in hotels, in some cases 4-star hotels, while social housing in those areas are anything but high quality, I think that really tells you about two-tier government, in my view.
Yeah, and just a last point, Rakib, we spoke to the Home Office just a few hours ago, and they told us, they actually said that we don't tell local communities about these hotels because it's our job to concentrate on the safety of the migrants. Again, of course, you know, we care about the safety of the migrants, but to basically, it's the epitome of two-tier government, isn't it? To say what we care about is the safety of the migrants, and we care about that more than the local community's right to know that they're there.
No, absolutely. I think for far too long, the safety and security of law-abiding British citizens has been relegated in terms of importance. And I think that almost tells you about that sort of post-national governance, that really is the safety of British citizens, that should be the primary responsibility of government. But all too often we've seen that that's not really the case.
Rakib, great to talk to you. Thank you so much again. Compliments of the season to you. Dr. Rakib Eason there, Senior Policy Advisor at the Policy Exchange. Always good to have him on the show. What do you think about that? You know, we've got this council, there's a video, we've got all this cheap housing in the most expensive area in Britain. If you're interested, here's a load of foreign speakers. It's just like, what is going on? 03444991000. What do you make of that? When we come back, Air Miles Lindsay Hoyle, the speaker, jetting round the world at our expense. Seems all wrong to me. Stay tuned for that.
Next year, and it will be around the rise of reform. And if Keir Starmer isn't careful, and I think this is probably the most likely outcome, is that it becomes a 5-year. It becomes widely accepted that he's only got one term in office, and that actually it's just a case of trying to do as much as he possibly can in that term, according to his own agenda.
Yeah.
But it loses its direction and its reason to exist.
And without any support, because there's nothing really that he's doing that's got any support at all.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk about Sir Lindsay Hoyle. He's the former, he's a Labour MP, but is required to be neutral because he's Mr. Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle. I suppose the best thing you can say about him is he's better than his predecessor, the awful, loathsome John Bercow. People are saying he's very good at his job, very good. Sir Lindsay Hoyle's really... I don't think so. I don't think he's that good at all. I think he shows a definite prejudice towards his Labour mates. However, he's that job. Does it well enough. Order! Be quiet, let the speaker say. Yeah, great, really good job. Well worth earning 200 grand a year for, or whatever it is you get paid. Anyway, the point is he sits in a seat and shouts order. Why then, over 2 years, has this guy, Mr. Speaker, billed taxpayers more than £250,000 for jetting around the globe in 2 years? Only recently, MP's expenses reveal that this guy, the Speaker, not a working MP or anything like that, splashed out on 17 foreign jaunts, making him the most well-travelled Commons Speaker ever. Why, you might ask, in July, did he jet off on a 5-day trip to the Cayman Islands and then put in a bill of £22,785, including £15,806 for non-economy flights, and no economy for him, VIP, £6,436 for accommodation. That means luxury hotels. £544 for meals and drinks. The reason for this trip, this jolly, frankly, was to visit the Hazard Management Unit and the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service Training Centre. Oh, I take it all back. It was a very vital trip, obviously. And always to meet his counterparts, the people running the Parliament in the Cayman Islands. I think that this guy should be stopped from all of these trips because there's a cost of living crisis. We have to pay this. We don't want any more burdens on our taxes. We don't want speakers spending £250,000 in a couple of years. Let's speak to the media campaigns manager at an organisation that keeps a close eye on this kind of, what I would say, waste of taxpayers' money. He's from the Taxpayers Alliance, William Yarwood. Welcome, William.
Good evening, Kev. Great to be on the show, and Merry Christmas.
And to you. I don't know if Lindsay Hoyle's planning another one of his foreign jet-setting trips over Christmas, but I wouldn't be surprised. What is this all about? Why is the Speaker spending more than £250,000 of our money going off on these jaunts to meet his counterparts in places like the Cayman Islands, St Helena, and so on and so forth, South Africa? I mean, what's going on here, William?
Well, Lindsay Hoyle's very, very important. He has to go all around the world and shout order at people, surely, or maybe even get tips when he's meeting his counterparts on how to say order correctly and control unruly MPs, maybe. But look, he's the Speaker of the House. He's not the Speaker of the world. He's not the Speaker of the Cayman Islands. He's not Speaker of any other country. He's not the Foreign Secretary. He's not the Prime Minister. He's not the Defence Secretary. He has no real reason to be spending this level of money on foreign trips, when in reality what he should be doing is doing what he does actually relatively well, which is be a Speaker in the House of Commons, control MPs, make sure ministers and backbenchers are able to get their questions through and actually answer them properly without being heckled too much. I don't quite understand why he's doing this. Maybe there's a level of ego involved with it, like there is with most people in politics and most politicians in the House of Commons, who believe that they're very important and they need to go abroad to show their face and, do, international stakeholder engagement or whatever nonsense they might say it might be. But frankly, he's the Speaker of the House. He should be in the House and not jet-setting around the world at taxpayers' expense, especially when many people across the UK are going to be feeling the pinch this winter with the tax burden, the winter fuel payment being cut, and a variety of other issues.
Yeah. So, as I just said, when he went to the Cayman Islands in July, it was over the turn of the month of July and August, 5-day trip. That cost us £22,785. And a 9-day visit previous to that to South Africa and St Helena. That cost £23,643. And last December, Sir Lindsay billed us £5,000 for a luxury trip, 4-day trip to Gibraltar, that including £2,000 for flights. By the way, you can get flights to Gibraltar for a lot less than £2,000, I'll tell you that. So he must have probably gone first class. And £2,700 for accommodation. I mean, these are jollies, aren't they? They're so he can go to nice places and enjoy himself. That's what's going on. And let's widen the remit here, William. This is going on all the time. MPs are always going off, funded by us, on these tax or these fact-finding missions that are supposed to be very important. They're sort of they're paid for holidays, aren't they?
Yeah, completely, Kevin. You mentioned the fact-finding elements. Well, last time I looked, I don't think most MPs in the House of Commons even know what a fact is. I mean, if they're going abroad to all these different countries to fact-find and find out how to run Britain correctly, you'd think a lot of those facts and those findings would have actually been implemented, and maybe the country would be run a little better. But no, they're just jollies. I mean, there's some really, really like scandalous, sleazy stories back in the early 2020s, in like 21 and 22, of MPs going abroad and visiting, ladies of the night and doing marathon drinking sessions and, basically living it up, all the while they're saying, oh, actually, no, this is really important international engagement in reality. No, they're jollies. And quite frankly, they're caused by these all-party parliamentary groups, which is essentially, at this point, essentially they're just glorified travel agents for self-important sanctimonious MPs who like to go abroad and make themselves feel better about themselves, despite the fact that most of them are actually pretty irrelevant and pretty incompetent. So, yeah, quite frankly, the Parliamentary Standards Authority and other groups really need to crack down on APPGs and really crack down on foreign jollies abroad. Because MPs, there's an argument to say that MPs should not be, glorified local councillors and they shouldn't be dealing with minute issues, and that's an argument to be had. But also, they shouldn't be, glorified, like, international people going around trying to, like, figure out how other countries work. Well, that's their argument, isn't it? Like I said, if they found out how other countries work, maybe they bring back some of those ideas with them. But I mean, most of them are probably on a bit of a hangover, so you can't really blame them for that one. But yeah, they need to be completely and utterly clamped down on. I mean, I frankly abolish a lot of the APPGs in Parliament. I think a lot of them are useless, and they're just there as busybody work for MPs, or indeed getting nice little foreign trips abroad. So yeah, it just encourages sleaze. It's a waste of taxpayers' cash, and once again, it just sends completely the wrong message. How can MPs sit in the House of Commons and talk about cost of living crisis and the tax burden, all the while they're jet setting off to nice countries, which many people in this country just can't afford to do because they're being taxed out of the wazoo?
I'm just going to quickly run through a few of these jollies. As you quite rightly say, William, they're always cross-party trips, so you have MPs of all denominations. So in 2020, a group of MPs travelled to Dubai for a trade conference. That cost us £200,000. Here's one from 2019. Cross-party MPs fly to Japan, £150,000 that cost. Davos Ski Summit, £60,000 for that MP's Alpine Adventure 2020. That was £75,000 for climate talks in Bahamas. The climate, of course, as you know, in the Bahamas is very, very nice. So I hope they enjoyed themselves. £40,000 to South Africa for a trade mission, and that was in 2020, and so on and so forth. And I'm just thinking, when old Sir Lindsay Hoyle goes to sort of consult with his opposite numbers, people who do his job. So do you think he goes to the Cayman Islands and says to the Speaker of the Cayman Islands House, so, how is it that you say order, order? I say it like this, order, Order. How do you say it? Well, I said order, order. You know what I mean? What? You don't need to consult with other speakers of the House to find out how they do the job. These are tax-funded holidays, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah, you're completely right, and you can sort of imagine Lindsay Hoyle doing that. Actually, you know, doing his usual voice, which I must say, Kev, fantastic impression. It's
Wasn't that bad, was it?
Came out of nowhere with me. I was about to have a go at him, but I realised it was you, Kev. But yeah, look, like I said earlier, a lot of this stuff just needs to be completely and utterly defunded. I mean, there's so much waste inside of the state, and also when MPs, you know, talk about how they're really dedicated to saving taxpayers' cash. Well, maybe a lot of them should look in the mirror, right, and recognise that actually they're not good value for money, and they're not a good use of taxpayers' cash. I mean, one thing that Lindsay Hoyle did say, or his office said when this story came out, is that value for money and taxpayers' concerns were always considered. Any time a politician says a line like that, you know it's a complete and utter lie. They don't care, because also a lot of them are sort of hoping that they don't get found out. They don't get found out, and they're hoping they're able to just push this under the rug, and that they can have their nice little foiler and jollies to, whatever godforsaken place they decide to go next. Well, so yeah, MPs should be in the House of Commons. Obviously, secretaries of state and foreign ministers and things like that. That makes sense. They should be allowed to go abroad. But quite frankly, Speaker of the House shouldn't. Backbench MPs shouldn't. They should be delivering for their constituents, delivering for taxpayers. And quite frankly, when they do this kind of stuff, it proves they simply don't care.
To cut him some slack, I'm sure that the information that Sir Lindsay Hoyle picked up when he visited, very importantly, the Hazard Management Unit and the Royal Cayman Islands Police Services Training Centre was vital to Britain. That is value for money. This is a disgrace. It's got to stop. William, merry happy Christmas to you, and thank you very much for an excellent visit to my show. That's William Yarwood, Media Campaigns Manager at the Taxpayers Alliance. And what do you think? I mean, these guys are just spending your money. You notice that they always got the Bahamas and Dubai and the Cayman Islands, you know, nice places with the sun. They don't go to Siberia, do they? Places like that. Always go to places where it's sunny. Shouldn't this stop? Shouldn't they stop wasting our money on these fact-finding missions? Get the MPs to do their job? Stay in Westminster, sort the country out, maybe even the Prime Minister. I mean, my God, does he fly around? We've just established that since he has been in power, since July the 5th, effectively, he has been out of the country for 20% of his premiership. So that's 1/5 of the time he's been Prime Minister. He hasn't been here. No wonder he's called Never Hear Keir. Enough already, yeah? Should this stop? No more funding by taxpayers, MPs' jollies. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. And indeed, when we come back, we will be taking your calls, so stick around.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Going to go to the calls in just a second. I've got a message here. It's from Ollie. You don't normally mention your rivals in journalism. You try not to sort of put their names up in lights, but I'm going to do it anyway. Ollie says, Talk TV beating GB News hands down. Thank you. Kevin O'Sullivan, fearless, and his guests, Miss Oakshott. Isabel Oakshott there. Ollie says, I always switch on at 7, even though it's a nightmare going on to YouTube. Sorry about that. I don't think it's that difficult, but if you're having trouble, Ollie, I'm sorry. And then he says, mysteriously, I'm not quite sure what this is, why do you never reply? Well, I'm not sure where you're sending your messages, Ollie, but I'll try to. Are you the Ollie that I think you might be? Let me know. You know the deal. Anyway, that's Ollie. I'll read some more of your messages later. We're going to go back to the phones in an hour or so and talk to you all. It's good to talk on Talk, but first we've got a few minutes now, so let's talk on Talk. Let's do it right now. Let's go to Gloucestershire and talk to Bryn. Hello, Bryn.
Hello.
What would you like to say? You're a first-time caller. You're very welcome to the show. And you are disillusioned with Labour, I sense. You're saying it used to be a word...
Is not the word.
Hmm? Disillusioned is not the word, OK. What is the word?
My dad always told me, God rest him many years now, he'd be turning in his grave at the moment, Labour was for the working man.
Yeah.
Well, this Labour government couldn't organise a good knees up in a brewery. They lie out the back of their teeth.
Yep.
Every government has got rid of a workforce in this country.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll tell you, got rid of the coal miners.
Well,
British Steel is gone down the pan. It's owned by a Chinese company. The water is not owned by British no more.
Sure.
We have all the immigrants coming in.
That's for sure.
What stopping?
And we're paying for them, Bryn. Don't forget that.
What is stopping Taliban giving them a phone call? We got no army to say army. Give them a phone call and start the bombing off in this country again.
Well, it's
stopping them.
Well,
nothing at all. We let them in left, right, and centre.
Well, one of the things with the Taliban is I don't think they've got any planes and they haven't got any bombs. But I take your, I respect your concerns. You said that Labour, right? Labour are no longer for the working man. Couldn't agree with you more. But they are, Bryn. They are for the working man, as long as that working man works for The Guardian or Channel 4 and lives in North London. They've forgotten what you're talking about working.
Hang on.
Yeah.
I live in the Forest Dean in Gloucestershire, and I'm proud to be a forester. I am proud to be British, but I'm not proud when a party like Labour sinks a farmer into the ground. What are they going to do? Cover it with houses and solar panels?
Yeah, almost certainly, mate. Yeah, 100%. Old Ed Miliband, he'll be down there with his windmills, his solar panels, getting rid of your farms, flattening your forests and turning us into one great big green hellhole, to be honest with you. Yeah.
They are going to have a revolution on their hands.
I think you've got a point there. I think that they are dangerously out of step with the people of this country, and the mood is rising. This is a bad mood in this country, and people have had enough.
Oh, I'm fed up with him already.
Well, yeah.
I've never even voted for him. I voted for Neil Lafarge. He is the best bloke. He speaks the truth.
Nigel Farage, yeah.
He was out with the farmers.
Absolutely.
Backing the farmers. Not going to tax them like inheritance tax. stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
How to get rid of the farmers.
Yeah, well, he's alienated the farmers, he's alienated old people, he's alienated the WASPI women, he's alienated virtually everybody, Bryn. Bryn, listen, mate, I've got to move on, but thank you very much for the call, and call me again. That's Bryn in Gloucestershire. Let's move on to Anthony in Essex. I've got a message here, Anthony, saying that you feel bad for Starmer. He's trying his hardest. Are you being ironic?
I do.
Are you being ironic?
Yeah, I do. I think he's very amusing. He amuses
Well, he's
me.
funny. He's funny. Well, it's not very amusing if you're sort of a pensioner who's going to freeze to death because he took your winter fuel allowance away. That's not amusing, is it?
No, I'm 77. I'm a Cockney from Wapping, down at the river. I'm one of those freezing pensioners.
Well, so you think it's amusing that he's taken your winter fuel? That's not amusing. That's infuriating.
No, he keeps me warm by
laughing.
When he was on that Jeep the other day, going through France.
Oh yeah.
He thought he was Rommel or someone.
It was weird. That was a very, very weird. I agree. Standing on the back of that lorry.
There's no people there. Just soldiers. And what's he thinking about? What's he doing? That's why he's amusing, because he's so stupid.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but what's interesting about what you're saying, Anthony, is you're right. Yeah. This Prime Minister has reached the point where he is so loathed and so despised by so many people that we've stopped hating him and we started laughing at him. You know, we've got this #1 record at the moment, which is just taking the mickey out of him. So we're laughing at this Prime Minister now because he's so bad. And I take your point. But it really isn't funny, you know, if you're a farmer and he's taken away your inheritance. If you're an old person, well, you are one of those old people, and he's taken away your winter fuel allowance. This stuff isn't funny. This is depressing, to say the least.
I don't mean it's funny. I'm just saying it's amusing. Why are we letting him get away with this?
Well, is that because the country, the nation voted him in to power? He's the Prime Minister. He can pretty much do whatever the hell he wants. So we've all got, well, not me, because I didn't vote for him, but millions of people have got buyer's remorse. They're thinking, why did I vote for this guy? Well, I'll tell you why, everybody, why you voted for him. Because he lied through his teeth. He told you nothing but porky pies, and you trusted him, and you won't make that mistake again, and nor will you, Anthony. Good call, Anthony. Thank you very much for ringing. Call me again. Anthony in Essex there. When we come back after these messages, after this break, MasterChef, by the way, unless you're in any doubt, we already knew, but Greg Wallace's goose is well and truly cooked. He's gone, he's cancelled, because MasterChef, they haven't really announced that they've finished this investigation into him. I thought they were supposed to be investigating Greg Wallace for, you know, alleged inappropriate behaviour around women. I don't know how that investigation's going, but they've replaced him. They've replaced him with a woman who works for The Guardian. There's a big surprise, isn't it? You know, the BBC Bible. The only place The Guardian sells any copies at all is in the BBC. You can't move for copies of the BBC if you go to Broadcasting House, New Broadcasting House. Around the country, though, it sells about 6 copies. But the BBC loves it. They have appointed to replace Greg Wallace someone who works for The Guardian. Big surprise. Find out who it is after this break.
England has been hijacked, and it's been hijacked through a sort of wonky election that people have tried to explain to me, and it's been hijacked by a group of people who do not have English interests at heart. They are going to take England down a road that is not going to be England, and you've got to play hardball back. Nigel Farage, I've no objection to him getting money if you've got a loan or if you've got anything from anywhere, if that's what he needs. But is he the right man? Has he got the strength? You need someone with real strength.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
As I was saying before the break, old Greg Wallace, we were told the BBC's investigating allegations of inappropriate behaviour around women, and it did seem like the odds were stacked against him, I have to say. That notwithstanding, what happened to the investigation? Because they've suddenly appointed someone to replace him. So we don't know the results of the investigation, but he's gone. So, anyway, so where did the BBC look? Well, we need a replacement for the old Cockney Barrow boy, you know, the fruit and veg man, Greg, salt of the earth. Where should we go? The Guardian. Yeah, that's right. They've appointed Grace Dent, who is, of course, The Guardian's restaurant critic. She was in I'm a Celebrity, was it last year? She wimped out, mentally and physically drained and all that. Well, let's talk about this extraordinary change on this important television show with TV critic for the Daily Express and the Daily Star, Mike Ward. Hello, Mike.
Okay, you right?
Yeah, good. Well, so that investigation just seems to have disappeared, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It was very, very quick, or it's ongoing, and we'll hear from them in about 20 years' time. It's one way or the other, isn't it? Really, but in the meantime, as you say, they've moved hastily to make sure the brand isn't damaged too much by bringing in someone who's not going to make the same mistakes as Greg. I think it's fair to say in that respect.
Yeah, and of course she writes for The Guardian. They know the BBC would never sort of look to the Daily Mail, would it? If she was the restaurant critic for the Daily Mail, she would not have this gig, would she?
Do they have one? I don't know. Actually, I've got no idea. But I do know, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan, and I'm not saying that just to be sort of bitchy and nasty. Whenever she's on, and she's on the show quite a lot because she comes in as a guest judge. Mm-hmm. She does the bit where she sits in the dining room next door with two other guest judges and uses the most flowery language to pontificate over beans on toast or whatever it is. So she kind of just rates. I mean, that's just a personal thing. That's no particular fault. That's just me being an irritable, old git. That's absolutely fine. But yeah, it's not an appointment exciting, and I don't quite know. I mean, it's interesting that to present a show where you're part of a partnership, as you will be with John Turode, you'd think they'd need to do quite a lot of sort of screen testing, for want of a better word, just to check they've got the chemistry as a presenting duo, as opposed to just him being there and her being an occasional guest. They've moved everything very, very quickly indeed. So I think they had their ideas in place for some while, shall we say.
Indeed. And for the BBC, I think that she sort of fits the mould because, of course, she writes for their holy Bible, The Guardian. And also...
Wasn't she a TV critic before?
I think she was at one point.
Yeah, so, I mean, why can't I do it? I mean, or you? I mean, basically, if you go for a TV critic to suddenly be an expert on fine dining, I reckon there's an opening there that we missed out on.
Well, I certainly feel that I've always encompassed both of those skills, being a TV critic and an expert on fine dining. But she's got that sort of earthy northern accent, hasn't she? So I think that they feel that she'll bring a certain grittiness to the show. But here's what I think, Mike. I think that I understand what they've done. We knew that Wallace would go. I do think it's kind of strange that they haven't even announced the result of their alleged investigation.
No.
They haven't even had an investigation, have they? They've decided he's got to go.
I think it might have been quite a quick one.
Yeah, he's out on his ear. But here's where I think they've missed a trick. It's the dynamic of what MasterChef has always been over 20 very successful years. Basically, you got two alpha males who go around judging people's food in a slightly different way. John Turode from the standpoint of expertise. He's a restaurateur, he's a great chef. Greg Wallace from a standpoint we know not where. We don't know why he was ever there. He's just some fruit and veg man.
There you go, fruit and veg, that is food.
Yeah, well, there you go. So that was the dynamic. It's two blokes. I know that's not fashionable, but that was the dynamic, and I would suggest part of the secret of the show's success. I wonder whether bringing in a woman will change that dynamic, possibly for the worse for the show.
It'll certainly change it. And I must admit, I've watched MasterChef, part of the job. I've watched MasterChef for years with those two, and I reckon for about the last 5 or 6 years, I've been watching it every time thinking, this can't last, because this is two blokes who failed to tick every box that you're meant to tick. Passing judgment on, they're all powerful. There's not even a public vote. They are all powerful in the context of that show. I've thought for some while, it can't go on. So in a way, it hasn't surprised me that something's cropped up. Not I'm saying this is fabricated, but I'm saying so it's convenient that something's cropped up that's allowed them to, shall we say, be, for want of a less hideous word, progressive with it.
But let's recap. I think last time we talked, we noted this really strange decision of the BBC during the height of the scandal, as it was erupting on the front page every day in every way, a new allegation about Greg. He, of course, denies that he did anything seriously wrong, but I think he did come to accept, I think the headline last Saturday, I think it was in The Sun, was "I'm done." He accepts his fate. But this strange decision by the BBC in the height of all this to say, right, because of evil Greg Wallace, we will cancel, we won't show the Christmas special of MasterChef, but we will carry on showing MasterChef The Professionals, on which Greg stars. Really weird decision.
It is weird. I mean, I sort of get it on one level, because you've got a lot of people who's they've entered as genuine contestants. They're professional chefs. It matters a lot to them. That's their big moment. They'll probably never be on telly again. So there's a sort of excuse there. I get that, and I get why there's no particular purpose in having these just one-off specials, because they don't have any great story to them. They are just a bunch of celebs coming in and doing a bit of stuff. I'm also quite fascinated because those specials exist somewhere, and I guess they're never going to be shown. They're going to be sort of appear on some limited edition Lost Apes show in 20 years' time, the MasterChef you never saw. Are we ever going to find out who won the Christmas version? Because that winner is out there somewhere.
That's a really good point. I'd like to know, Strange. I'd never cared before, but now I want to know.
I really want to know.
When they were screening it, I didn't give a damn, but now I am intrigued. But what about, it's interesting. The BBC loves Grace Dent, Northern, earthy, Guardian. She's got the whole kit and caboodle as far as the state broadcaster is concerned. I tell you, I'm not sure she'd work so well on ITV, because boy, oh boy, was it last year? She didn't half wimp out on I'm a Celebrity, didn't she? She wasn't very gritty and earthy and northern there. Oh, I'm angry, I'm so physically and mentally drained. She wimped out and flew home.
I never really got that. And she didn't even wimp out entertainingly. I mean, over the years, you've had some people who've wimped out in spectacular style, but made a big show of it, big performative gestures about how awful it all is, and then gone. She was just quite dull and whiny. And then I think she went after 9 days or something like that. I mean, if they go have somebody from last year's I'm a Celeb, get Nigel Farage on or somebody, at least he started the course.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when she bowed out, I'm a Celeb viewers sort of despised her. They hated her because you just don't do that on I'm a Celeb. The whole thing is you're having a tough time, you're starving, you're facing the task, the jungle, it's raining, it's tough, and the format, the show is you tough it out and you survive and you win. And she just went. It was 9 days she lasted. By the way, the show goes on for 3 weeks. She went, and she just literally got on a plane and said, "I'm physically and mentally drained." That wasn't...
Yeah, she never really sort of went into... I mean, you know, if it was something genuine, I mean, occasionally we've had people leave the show for genuine reasons. They've had, you know, a family lost back home or something like that. I get that. But she was just a bit dull and a bit whiny, and then decided, not for me, I'm going home, and it's all a bit too much. And there was nothing, there was no great... She could have created a story out of it, if nothing else, just to make it a bit more exciting, but no, she was dull.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if she was a really, really good journalist, then she could have created a story out of it, but then again, she works for The Guardian, so obviously she's not a very good journalist. Just before you go, Mike, anything to look forward to over the festive period at Christmas?
Yes, Kevin, I'm sure you're going to be tuning into Doctor Who on Christmas Day.
No, I'm not actually. They're doing that, okay. And Gavin and Stacey, is that coming up?
Gavin and Stacey is on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, I should say, at 9 o'clock, 90 minutes of that. The finale, allegedly, the very last episode.
The latest last ever episode.
The latest last episode. Yeah. And, of course, the only Wallace you're going to see on TV at Christmas is the one with Gromit. So that's on at 6 o'clock on Christmas Day, so that'd be fun.
Yeah, so is it Wallace or Gromit, the one who looks exactly like Ed Miliband? Or do they both look like Ed Miliband? What would be your pick, then? Your number one pick? Gavin?
I would say Gavin. It's got to be Gavin and Stacey. I mean, you know, it might be a bit cheesy by the end. I suspect it will be, but it tops everything else, I think, this year.
I think you're right. Mike, Merry Christmas. Pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time. Mike Ward there, TV critic. Read his stuff in The Express and The Daily Star. Very, very good it is too. I highly recommend it. When we come back after the news, it's Kinsey Schofield. We'll have a look back over the royal year, so stay tuned for that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is the final hour of tonight's Political Asylum, so we're taking you all the way through to 10 p.m, at which point Petri Hoskin will take over. She'll take you through to 1 a.m. So lots going on. Now, in a little while, actually in about sort of 25 minutes or so, I'm going to throw open the lines to you. So your calls from about 25 past all the way through to 10 o'clock. Get on the phone, let me know what you think of some of the stories we've been discussing tonight, or indeed if you want to talk about something else, by all means do so. The number is 03444991000. Particularly interested in what you feel about our first story, kind of an exclusive here, the fact that the government has an official policy not to tell you if you're living near a migrant hotel. So if you're a migrant, if you have a asylum seeker, a hotel full of asylum seekers down the road from you, the government doesn't want you to know. In fact, it goes out of its way not to tell you. You have no official way of finding this out, because the government thinks that if we did find this out, we'd all go on far-right riots. They don't trust you. They don't trust us. 03444991000. Do you hope that Elon Musk manages to get what they say might be as much as sort of £80 million, £70 million over to Reform UK to change the face of British politics, because Labour is trying to stop him. They are plotting to bring in a law to stop foreigners donating to British political parties. I think it'll be very tough to do, but it proves that they're blatantly terrified of what's going on. So let me know what you think about that. 03444991000. And why has the Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, spent more than £250,000 of your money, taxpayers' money, jetting round the world in just 2 years? Only in July, he spent like £23,000, £22,500 going to the Cayman Islands for 5 days. What's that all about? Let me know. 03444991000. I'll read some of your messages later as well. Thank you for sending them. Always good to hear from you, both on the phones and in the messages, and we'll play some WhatsApp voice notes if we've got any. I always promise to play all of them, and I will do that. Right, royal time. Let's go straight over to the West Coast, my old hometown, Los Angeles, and speak to royal commentator, the great Kinsey Schofield. Welcome, Kinsey.
Hi, Kev. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you. Well, which brings us... what we'll do in a little while, we'll go back over Harry and Meghan's fabulous year. Actually, you know, it really had, to borrow the Queen's phrase, they have had an annus horribilis. They really, really have. So we'll go back over some of the lowlights of their terrible year. But, you know what these gruesome twosome are like. Never a day goes by without some kind of story about them. And this week's story that we haven't had a chance to talk about on this show yet, Kinsey, is, of course, their Christmas card, their holiday card, which was dispatched online. It's a strange card. There it is. I mean, first of all, Kinsey, it's not very intimate. It starts off with this. On behalf of the office of Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, we wish you a very happy holiday season and a joyful new year. A lot of criticism on this side of the Atlantic, Kinsey, that they didn't say Happy Christmas. But in fairness to them, as a former resident of your fine town, your fine city, Los Angeles, that is the way it is in the States, that there's more concessions to all sorts of cultures. So, of course...
Yeah, Kevin, if you're trash, Jesus is the reason for the season, okay?
You just said happy holidays to me. I'm just trying to cut you some slack. I'm not...
Well, I need you to look at every one of those pictures, picture by picture, Kevin. They I don't know if you've noticed this yet, but they have one thing in common. Every individual other than Meghan Markle is admiring Meghan Markle. Have you noticed that?
I haven't.
Whether they're looking lovingly at her or embracing her, every person in that picture is running towards her, squeezing her, looking at her with cartoon heart eyes. Kev, That is just some desperation right there.
It absolutely is. And we spoke about this the other day on your excellent podcast, Recollections May Vary, but it's worth mentioning again. That weird picture of the kids, naturally, a lot of the papers over here going, the newspapers going, brilliant, we've got a picture of the kids. No, we haven't. We've got a picture of the back of their heads again. Yeah. You know, I want to see their faces. Don't tell me that's not a picture of the kids. That's a picture of the back of the kids. Anyway, you know, because they're very, very private. You know, Meghan seeks privacy all the time and never stops talking about it. Now, the point about that picture that I think is very weird is that there's Meghan going like this as the kids sort of rush into her arms, recreating that very famous picture of Princess Diana when she was alive, God rest her soul, doing exactly the same when William and Harry were little kids. Now, the point about the beauty of that picture, the point about that being one of the classic all-time royal pictures, was that it was this fabulously natural moment. She hadn't seen her kids, I think, for a couple of weeks, had been on some tour with Charles or something. There's her kids. She's absolutely thrilled. She's doing that. They're thrilled. They're leaping into her arms. It's one of those fabulous family moments we could all relate to. Now, with Meghan, it's an actress recreating a scene. It's weird.
Yes, but I'm also going to disagree with you right here. At the time, Princess Diana and Prince Charles were having problems behind the scenes. And she wanted to ensure that they got that shot of her embracing the kids because she was trying to look like the better parent at the time, and all the hubbub of the chaos going on behind the scenes and what we now know was the inevitable separation.
I think you're making her a bit too calculated there.
Are you kidding?
That was a mother saying hello to her kids.
Look, I love Diana, but remember the pictures of her and her cute little
she played the media. I agree with that.
Kay's car, hopping in Richard Kay's car. I mean,
she was an expert manipulator of the media. I accept that. Anyway, the point is, whether or not, whatever we think the reason for that shot of Diana doing this, it is weird that Meghan is recreating it. And that's the point. There's no spontaneity there. This is an actress recreating a scene, and it's strange, I think, don't you?
Well, yeah. If you look up Meghan Markle dressed like Princess Diana on social media on Google, you will see that years before she met Prince Harry, when she was on trips, I believe it was for UNICEF or, you know, on international trips, the type Princess Diana used to take, Meghan is dressed like Diana and posed exactly like some of Princess Diana's old pictures. So I never think that this is a one-off. I never think that it's just a coincidence. I think it's all very calculated. And you know, don't forget, Prince Harry has told us on numerous occasions that he thinks Meghan is the second coming of his mother. He tries to force that narrative on us. And it's like you said, Meghan lacks the authentic empathy and compassion that Princess Diana, truly, sincerely had. And I think that we see that through her, and Diana would have seen that through her too.
Yeah. I must send you a Christmas card, by the way, Kinsey. It's going to say later, on behalf of the office of Kevin O'Sullivan, we wish you a very happy Christmas. I mean, it's such a weird way to start a Christmas card.
Well, hey, Kev, guess who got the exclusive that is just the work Christmas card, and there's a super private Christmas card. Guess who got that exclusive?
You?
People Magazine.
People Magazine, of course. Their unofficial outlet. Really? Yes. So there's another card, is there? But you're absolutely right. I hadn't noticed that about the card that we've all seen, that it is just full of scenes of people admiring Meghan. Let's go back over the year if we can, because, as I say, it has been an annus horribilis for them. What are the lowlights of this year? I think their pointless pretend royal tours of Nigeria and Colombia. What were they all about? They went to Nigeria for 72 hours, posed for lots of pictures and left. Same for Colombia. Why? What's that about?
I think you know what that was about. That is Harry and Meghan's desperate attempt to continue to look like they are still royals, because they know that that's the only thing that they're capable of selling right now. And while you and I mean, I agree with you, while we look at that and we think to ourselves, that was a low point. I'm telling you, I had a publicist in California call me trying to pitch me someone. I had a Harry and Meghan story that I thought I could collaborate with them on. And this person that represented a celebrity said, we don't want anything to do with Harry and Meghan. They're toxic. But that publicist also said to me, and why were they just in Colombia? You know, like people are asking, why are these people doing this? What are they doing? I think the ultimate objective is the pretty pictures. They still want to look like they are attached to the royal family in some way, shape, or form, even though Meghan has now been a non-working royal longer than she ever was a working royal. And I think that they just realize that that's the only thing they're capable of selling, that's the only thing that the people are interested in. So they go there for the visuals, they go there just for the perception. And keep in mind, in Colombia, first of all, they don't allow a team of reporters to go with them. They choose one, and they're not working with those grassroots media outlets that they promised in 2020. They're working with People Magazine and Harper's Bazaar. And then when they released video and photos from Colombia, the video had absolutely no audio. And all the photos, you know, were handpicked and selected by them and released for the media. So they are highly manipulated trips when it comes to what actually comes out of those trips too. You know, we don't know what's being said or what's really going on, because they pick one person to go with them that's going to kiss their butt because they want that access and they're grateful for that access. And then everything they release is so highly manipulated. It's handpicked. There's no audio on any of the videos. Like, how are you supposed to get whatever cause it is you're trying to promote? How are you supposed to present that with no audio? I don't know why you're there, because you've taken the audio off your video.
Well, it strips it down to what these trips are really about. They're photo ops. Especially for Meghan, really. She loves posing for those kind of pictures. We saw Harry there in Nigeria playing with some disabled or some wounded Nigerian veterans. There was some connection between the military and his Invictus Games. But those are great photo opportunities, aren't they? That's what both these trips were about. You know, what did they achieve? Nothing, absolutely nothing. You know, there's a lot of old claptrap talk about mental health and that kind of stuff, but you know, it didn't really achieve anything. Neither of the trips achieved anything. So let's, talking of not achieving anything, what about their television career? Now, this time last year, you know, there are high hopes of what they might produce for their $100 million Netflix contract. They'd already produced the very successful, rather nasty series, Harry and Meghan, which poured a bucket all over the royal family and indeed everyone in Britain. I never knew that I was an evil slave driver until I saw that documentary series. Apparently I am, because I'm British. And the royal family are racists, and the king is a skinflint. That was all in the... Now, that stuff is compelling. But as that guy who runs Spotify said when he ditched their $20 million contract, said, don't want to know these guys anymore, he said, trouble with those two, they're a couple of grifters, and when they're not pouring a bucket over the royal family, they've got nothing else to give. They've got nothing else of interest about them. So we entered 2024, January. Well, what would they do for Netflix? So what they've done is Harry produced a dull but worthy documentary about the Invictus Games. So I don't want to deride the Invictus Games. It's great. You know, it's for military heroes, it's for veterans, wounded veterans, and nothing wrong with that. But the documentary was a bit worthy, was a bit dull, but not to be criticised, I think. So what was the next thing they produced? Oh, it was Polo, which only came out a couple of weeks ago, a 5-part series about a posh, niche horse sport that Harry loves and his privileged South American rich friends love. But no one else does. No one else cares. We thought this series would be bad, but as I said to you the other week, it's not just bad. It is dreadful. It is awful. Every critic around the world just said, boring, awful, dreary, dull, and Harry and Meghan aren't in it much. So neither Harry, Meghan, nor Netflix even bothered to promote it. It is dying on its backside as we speak. A disaster, and I think that will have put pay to their $100 million contract with Netflix now.
4 years. It took them 4 years to develop that show, and it's taken 5 years. It's taken 5 years to develop Meghan's cooking show that we still haven't seen come to fruition. That type in today's society where you and I can, yesterday, you and I sat down for 30 minutes and that podcast was up within 24 hours. You have to move fast today. Interest in people's attention spans, they move so quickly that it's unacceptable to take 5 years to develop a freaking cooking show. This polo show, still, it's been out a week and it still hasn't hit Netflix top 10 in the States. That is definitely considered a fail. I mean, Prince Harry's going to sit back and pat himself on the back because in 2024 he won the Living Legends of Aviation Awards, in Beverly Hills, California. Yeah. And he's going to sit back and he's going to pat himself on the back because he won the Pat Tillman Award, despite the mother of the man it was named after, the deceased war hero's mother, saying, "I don't think you deserve this." Harry stood up and accepted that award. They will consider that some of these wins, but the reality is that professionally, this was a very damaging year for their reputation. They hype up a lot of things. American Riviera Orchard announced in March. Where is it? Where is Meghan's Limonada podcast announced in February? And nothing comes to fruition.
Yeah, and you're right about Harry. I forgot about the awards, the Legend of Aviation. I mean, he's not a legend of aviation. It's ridiculous. He got that award from John Travolta, didn't he?
John Travolta.
And then as you say, he got the Pat Tillman Award for services to the military and sport or something. And Pat Tillman's mother, Mary, Pat Tillman, of course, a genuine American war hero, a football star who gave up his lucrative career to go and fight for his country and lost his life. Respect to Pat Tillman and respect to his mother. His mother said, "What on earth are you giving this award named after my son to some irrelevant British prince? Why are you doing this? This is supposed to be for unsung heroes." And yet Harry, he'll fly anywhere to pick up a Toy Town award. Despite all the criticism, he still had to do it. He still preens himself, going, "Oh, look, I got this trophy." It's pathetic, actually.
It is pathetic, but there are some arguments, because here's another huge headline from 2024. There are some headlines that one of the reasons that he pursues collecting these trophies so aggressively is because it helps with his visa application. Because he gets to show the government, well, like, look at how accomplished I am. Look at this aviation award your country gave me. Look at this ESPN award that your country gave me. I am a unique individual. I deserve to be here. So that was a huge headline this year, and the Heritage Foundation is still fighting to have access to Prince Harry's visa records, and that was a dominant headline in 2024.
Yeah, a very good point. And let's focus on that visa drama that Harry is going through. Now, old Joe Biden, forelock touching Joe, they couldn't do enough. They bowed and scraped to Harry and said, "Oh, it's none of our business what's in his visa application." Well, it is, actually. He said he takes drugs. He admitted in his book that he took cocaine, magic mushrooms and cannabis. These are all illegal drugs. And the question is, did he declare that on his visa application to be a resident of your great country, the United States of America? If he did declare that, why was he allowed to stay there? Why was he allowed to live there? Because the rule is, if you're a drug taker, you can't stay in America. If he didn't say that, If he didn't put that down, then he's lied on his visa application. Now, as you say, the Heritage Foundation think tank in Washington has been fighting a long case to say we need to be able to see this guy's visa application. Joe Biden protected him. Donald Trump, maybe not so much. He's indicated he wants to look at that visa, and he's indicated that he's not very keen on Harry and Meghan because he thinks, I think with some justification, that Harry and Meghan treated our late great Queen Elizabeth terribly.
And the Heritage Foundation has filed a new document saying that they believe that Prince Harry entered the country illegally. So there's a completely new argument happening right now.
Wow.
Let's also not forget that when we had access to Archwell's tax documents this year, we realized that Harry and Meghan sent a $250,000 donation to Joe Biden's daughter's charity in Pennsylvania, which I do think we should consider when we think about the Biden administration fighting so hard to protect this prince's visa application documents when Melania Trump's mothers are accessible. A future first lady, a former first lady, you know, the fact that you can get her information, but you can't get Prince Harry's, the Heritage Foundation wants to know why. That story is not even remotely over. At the end of the day, I don't know if the Heritage Foundation is going to win this. I don't know. I just think a lot of people aren't going to want to waste the resources to
I think, Kenzie, that I do think we will end up finding out what's on his visa application. Now, Trump, I think, is enjoying making these two woke left-wing individuals on the West Coast uncomfortable. Do I think he will go the whole 9 yards and kick Harry out of the country? Frankly, I doubt it. But I think he'll make life rather uncomfortable for those two. But you mentioned the charity there, and in our fine review of the year that we're doing, we need to talk about the Archwell Foundation, their charity. This was the charity that was going to change the world, make the world a better place. You know, global impact. That's what they talk about, game-changing global impact. Well, we got their tax returns. We got the charity's tax returns only recently. Turned out that donations to Archwell over the past year were, I think I'm right, if I remember it right, it were $5,750,000, $5.75 million. Now, first of all, that is a tiny amount in terms of charity. You can't do anything globally with just less than $6 million. You just can't do it.
Kev, Jeff Bezos hands somebody $5 million for handing them the towel in the bathroom. Like Jeff Bezos is like, thanks.
Yeah. I mean, you can't change the world with $5,750,000. You can only change a village if you're lucky. The other thing about that was, so global impact, Archwell Foundation, nothing. It isn't achieving anything at all. Its donations are miniature, useless, paltry, feeble, and interestingly, though, of that $5.75 million, $5 million was from one benefactor. So they got one donation of $5 million, and many people believe that the person who donated that $5 million was Harry, in order to spare the blushes of their charity, which basically is dying on its backside.
Yeah, I mean, it gives them a little credibility to say that they are that they have this foundation. You know, look at the way that the Clintons use the Clinton Foundation. I think that that's their ultimate objective. They want to have something, you know, comparable. And that's what gets Prince Harry in the door with people like, you know, when he was in New York for Climate Change Week and he was sharing the same stage as Bill Clinton. I mean, I think that this charity ultimately helps. I mean, Travelist helps too, and Invictus, but you know, having Archwell as that pillar, that umbrella, it definitely helps. But I agree with you. The same with American Riviera Orchard. The messaging is off. Mm-hmm. They need to start from scratch, and they need to build the right materials and messaging so we have any idea what they're trying to do, whether it's with American Riviera Orchard or Archwell. These two are terrible with messaging. It's because they're hyper. It's like you said, Meghan is not private. She uses the privacy to build hype around herself. Yeah, but because they're so secretive and insist on being so secretive, their messaging gets lost.
Yeah, they're theatrically secretive. She loves to talk about her love of privacy. She loves to be very public with her love of privacy. They are.
A great example of that is when she told Oprah Winfrey that the reason she didn't want to stay in the UK was because she refused to have paparazzi snapping photos of her children being dropped off at school every day. First of all, I'd say to you, have you seen one picture this year of Prince William, Prince George, or Princess Charlotte being dropped off at school?
No.
But Kev, she then takes the cut journalist to pick up Archie at school.
Yeah, she loves privacy as long as everybody knows about it. Last question, very quickly, Kinsey, because I've got to go. As usual with you, I've taken far too long. And by the way, very happy Christmas, compliments of the season, great new year. It's been wonderful working with you, and we're going to pick up where we left off next year. But before you go, what's going to happen to these two? What does 2025 hold? What does it promise for the gruesome twosome? I don't know.
I can promise you that they won't be working with a Hollywood Reporter who absolutely savaged them in September and was the biggest headline of 2024, devastated them to the point of them having to get on their knees for Us Weekly magazine. Embarrassing. We'll see American Riviera Orchard probably get off the ground. Meghan's cooking show probably launch, fingers crossed, but there are questions surrounding that. It's going to be the year that Meghan Markle likely has to take a lot of criticism, and I don't know if she's prepared for that.
And Harry can go and play some polo, so they can have a lovely year. Kinsey, thanks very much. Lovely time, and all the best to you. Kinsey Schofield there, royal commentator over there on the West Coast. We better go straight to break, and then afterwards we're going to take your calls. I'll read some of your messages. Sorry I took so long there.
When the UK take over the Chagos Island, they were British subjects, so we are a British citizen. At the moment, in the UK, a lot of British citizens is facing intentionally homeless because there's a code of penal 2021 who imprison them 10 years if they are supporting UK sovereignty over Chagos.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Look, thank you for all your messages. We're going to read a few, then we're going to go to break, and then we'll take your calls, OK? Because I've screwed up all the timing, of course, talking too long to Kinsey Schofield there. Right, what have we got here? This is from David in Clacton. Can I ask why everything to do with Labour's Lord Ali has gone silent? Also, can I ask you live on air to ask the King or Prince... Yeah, I'll get the King on, or Prince William. He wants me to ask the King or Prince William live on air, that's unlikely, by the way, to step up, listen to their people and demand a re-election. Well, David, I understand your sentiments there, but the King and Prince William have got no right to do that. They have no power. They're just, well, not just royals, they're our royal family. They don't have any constitutional power. They can't do anything about the election. They don't govern this country. The government governs this country. That's the way it is. So you can understand turning to the royals, but there's nothing they can do. This is from Dorothy in East Kilbride. The Home Office are civil servants who seem to think they are above the rest of the public. Their job is to cut crime, reduce immigration, prevent terrorism and keep the UK safe. I suspect the majority of the public, as I do, believe they are doing the exact opposite. Shocking. The thing is, Dorothy, actually their job is to do what the government tells them, but they don't tend to do that. Simon Dickinson, I think, he sent me a message here, and he's hit the nail on the head, so you want to listen to this. Dorothy said, these are the same civil servants that blocked every Tory attempt to change the asylum backlog. Good point, Simon. The Labour Party has inherited only one problem, the Home Office. Absolutely right, absolutely right. And quickly, George in Lymington, there is no doubt many civil servants and Border Force have done their best over the last few hours to delay the processing of illegal criminals entering our country. I agree with that, George. There is no doubt. And Trevor from Harrow says we need to help ex-service homeless and to start camping outside this luxury illegal migrant camp in Cardiff. It's not illegal, and they say it's not a migrant camp, but it is. It's a migrant village. Yes, put some homeless people outside. Homeless military veterans embarrass Cardiff Council into helping them. Let's go to break. When we come back, we'll take some of your calls. So stick around. 0344 499 1000. Got plenty of time, so let's talk. It's good to talk on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Here's a WhatsApp voice note. This is Steve on our dear leader, Keir Starmer.
Hello, Kev. And it's ironic, yeah, that old two-tier Keir is worried about a foreigner interfering with our electoral system. To be honest, he should be more worried about the 200 that come in every single day that he does nothing about, puts them in hotels, treats them like kings. That will have the same detrimental effect on him in people's opinions anyway. He's screwed either way. Game over for old two-tier Keir. Done.
I think it's game over, Steve. A good voice note there. The problem is his game won't be fully over, probably for 4.5 years. We've got another 4.5 years of this guy. Although many people say he may not be the Prime Minister who is in power in number 10 Downing Street come the next election. He may not last. Certainly that would be good for the nation because he is hopeless. I mean, he's unbelievably hopeless. His front bench, arguably even worse than him. I mean, what a lousy cabinet we've got. All of them Remainers, all of them Marxists, all of them intent on taking all of your money from the private sector and giving it to the public sector. Let's give train drivers 90 grand a year. Yeah, let's do it. Oh, the doctors want 38%. Give it to them. That's their method of solving industrial disputes. Give the strikers whatever they want. Well, it doesn't really work, does it? Now, we've got a bit of trouble with the phones. We're hoping that they'll work. I mean, I've got lots of calls. It's just I can't... they can't get through to me. So we're trying to fix that engineering-wise. So I'm going to stick with some messages. This is from Smudge in Swindon. He says, great opening subject. That was when me and Isabel discussed the fact that the government has an official policy not to tell you if you have a migrant hotel on your doorstep. If you've got one on your doorstep, you probably know, but if you got one down the road, mile down the road, somewhere in your town, they don't want you to know. In fact, they have a policy that you don't know. They are officially keeping us all in the dark about more and more. Thousands of foreigners just arriving, most of them, you know, on boats, illegal boats, and, you know, the government has a policy not to tell us that they're there, and that seems to me to be wrong. So Smudge says, great opening subject, exposing Starmer and his chums for their lies over migrants. I don't know where they put these people around where I live, but I do know that I no longer visit the centre of Swindon or go out after dark. Thing is, Smudge, good point. Absolutely take the point to be serious for a second, to be less serious. How do you find the centre of Swindon? Because while I go to Swindon, I don't go there often, but it seems to me it's just a series of hundreds of roundabouts. It's just loads and loads of roundabouts. So how do you find the centre of Swindon? That's our off-piste question of the day. This is from Simon. He says, thank you for standing up for British values. Just to let you know, I'm an engineer with 40 years' experience designing electoral systems, control systems and highly complex commercial spaces. I am off. I've had enough. I'm upping sticks and going abroad and taking my experience and money with me. Good luck with this utterly useless, mediocre, childish government, and Starmer needs to go now. Simon, you know, yeah, very good point, Simon. And, you know, this is a problem. Talented people are going to leave the country. Right, I'm still trying to fix the phones. But we've got a couple more WhatsApp voice notes. This one is anonymous, but it is on migration and the state of the nation. So take it away, Mr. Anonymous.
See, my take on it again is the problem is not just with the government, because, yeah, well, we know they're terrible, but we could do something about it. We all, as a collective, need to stand up, pull our trousers up and get off the pot and do something about it. But who's going to lead the charge? Maybe you lot talk.
Well, we're doing our best, Mr. Anonymous. Really good voice note. So next time, put your name on it. But thank you. Here's another one. This is George, again, on the state of the nation, the terrible state of the nation.
Hello, Kevin. George from Northampton here. What the government should do is get Capita, the team that are doing the PIP assessments for the elderly and disabled, to actually do the asylum claims. They could reject everything because they seem to do that with PIP.
Thank you very much, George. Very good voice note there. Quick note, the phones are working again, so we're going to go to the phones in just a second. This is Adrian Baird. He says, pile on the Starmer ridicule. Leave it with me, Adrian. I can do that. We'll ridicule that guy until the cows come home. Adrian goes on to say, it is the best way to advertise the corruption and callousness of our Prime Minister. It'll be cold this Christmas with all that money going abroad. It'll be cold this Christmas, and Rachel Reeves is a fraud. That's that #1 song. Hopefully that song will be #1, humiliating this Labour government, fully deservedly so. Before we go to break, as I say, the phones are open again. They're working. We had a bit of a breakdown there, but they're working now. So let's go to London. Go to London. We're in London. Let's talk to Stephen. Hello, Stephen.
Hi, Kevin. Yeah, I think Starmer will definitely win the next election. He'll still be in power. He'll still be leader. And the reason for that is he's not alienated anyone who would vote Labour. The pensioners won't vote Labour ever. The farmers won't vote Labour. He's kept the public service workers on side by pay rises, and he's looking after the migrants who will all gain citizenship in the next 5 years, and they'll be thanking him for all the accommodation and food and everything he's got. So it's a definite slam dunk for Starmer at the next election.
Nicely said, Stephen. Let me tell you, he doesn't stand a chance. No chance whatsoever. He will lose the next election. He has managed to alienate almost everyone in Britain in just 5 disastrous months. He is hopeless. He is corrupt. He is a liar. His cabinet are a disgrace. They will not win the next election.
Yeah, but he hasn't alienated anyone who votes for him. He's kept the public...
So what? That won't be enough at the next election. That won't be enough. That won't be enough. And by the way, Stephen, he has alienated millions of people who voted for him. So many people said, what have we done? What mistake? He lied to the nation throughout his deceitful campaign, and people realise that. They're not voting for him again. He's gone.
Well, I'm not. I hate Starmer. I think it's a horrible...
Yeah, well, he's not good. Well, in that case, Stephen, get it right. He is not going to win the next election. You are wrong. You are wrong.
Do you think he's doing all this and not thinking about the next election? He's not just doing...
No, well, he did think about the next election. Now, Labour, I know what Labour are saying to each other in private. They know they've screwed it up already. He's alienated too many people. His budget was an absolute catastrophe. £40 billion tax raise. That's going to ruin the economy. The economy's going to get worse and worse and worse. Business is going to get worse and worse and worse. People's living standards are going to get worse and worse and worse. Ed Miliband is going to wreck this country with his green claptrap. He does not stand a chance of winning the next election.
Well, I hope you're right.
I am right, Stephen. I am 100% right. And don't think that people go, he's very clever, he knows what he's doing. He is not very clever, and he does not know what he's doing. He's an incompetent liar, and that's not a good combo when it comes to elections. He's going to lose, Stephen, trust me. He will lose. I sense that you would like that to happen. So let's agree, both of us, that we really hope he loses the next election, yes?
I agree with that. I sincerely hope he loses.
Yeah, well, listen, trust me. You heard it here first. He's going to lose. Stephen, I take your point, though. A very good call. Thank you for ringing. Stephen in London. Let's go to break, take some more calls when we come back.
when the UK take over the Chagos Island, they were British subjects, so we are a British citizen. At the moment, in the UK, a lot of British citizens is facing intentionally homeless, because there's a code of penal 2021 who imprison them 10 years if they are supporting UK sovereignty over Chagos.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Quick, before we go back to the phones, quick voice note. Why aren't the Labour Party doing something to stop this trajectory to self-destruction? This is basically the end of the Labour Party for decades. Nobody will ever trust them again. Well, why aren't they doing something about this, Nigel? Because they're useless. They're useless. They haven't got the ability to do anything about it. They're incompetent. We are trapped in a spiral of decline, national decline, triggered by this government's utter, hopeless incompetence. It's as simple as that. In a little while, Petri Hoskin will be in to tell you what she's got lined up for your entertainment until 1 a.m, so stand by for that. But in the meantime, let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Michael in Birmingham. Hello, Michael.
Hi, how you doing, Kevin?
I'm all right. You want to talk about
I just wanted to say,
reform, yeah?
Yeah. I hope that they've been watching Donald Trump and his people in the USA, because what worries me about reform is they're all a bit posh boy, a little bit nice, and they might try and be a bit too kind of like consensual, build a consensus. Look, what it needs is just you take sides, you make your position clear, and people either like you or they don't, like Trump did. And they could just come out with statements right now which would win the next election. One would be, we'll put British people at first for everything.
Well, they do that. I mean, they do. You mean they haven't said that yet? They say that all the time.
I haven't heard them say that clearly.
Well, of course they do. I mean, they'll solve the migrant crisis. That's a vote winner.
Well, what they've got to say is, like Trump, we're going to stop all...
Well, they have. They've got very clear... I mean, the criticism of Reform UK is that perhaps they're not so clear on a fair few issues, but they're very, very clear on the migrant crisis. We know exactly what they do, and we trust them to solve it. They would solve it. They've got the resolve.
I mean, I want to be on their side, but Kevin, I haven't heard them come out and be as clear as Trump on that. You know, and Tom Homan saying, right, if you're illegal, you're going back. And basically, you know, don't let anybody stand in the way. They're going to get called.
Well, they have said that. They've said that illegals will not be allowed to stay, and they will stop the boats coming across, if necessary, turn them round, and they will treat all arrivals, people who come on illegal small boats, as illegal.
Yeah, and one more thing which I would like to hear them say is pass a law that aiding and abetting illegal immigration lands you in jail. And that goes for the NGOs, the RNLI, the whole lot, and apply it retrospectively. So if you're harbouring an illegal migrant or you're helping illegal migration, even as a charity and NGO, you're breaking the law.
Yeah, well, who is helping and who is harbouring illegal migrants at the moment? That's called the British government, and that isn't a Labour problem. The Tories were the Tories were dreadful. They let us down. They lied to us for 14 years. They were letting millions in legally, let alone illegally. So they're liars, useless. Labour, incredibly, have made it even worse.
Exactly. And there's so many Trojan horse ways of getting in as well.
Yeah.
I mean, don't forget, for every migrant, by the time they let their families in, you can multiply it by 10.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We've got a massive problem, but I do think Reform UK are pretty clear on how they will solve it. I would trust them to solve it. I'd like to hear some more about their policies in other areas, but I think more and more people are gravitating towards reform because they got resolve about the migration crisis and they'll get something done. But I take your point. I mean, they are, if you like, a work in progress. They're on a journey, but they got 4 years in opposition. They're making more noise than the Tories. They are a better opposition party than the Conservatives. Simple as that. Good point, though, Michael. Thank you for ringing. Ring again. That's Michael in Birmingham. By the way, before we go to the next call, I should announce to get your violins out, crying, Kleenex. I won't be in tomorrow. I'm not doing tomorrow night's show. And James Max will be standing in for me, but I will be back on Friday, so you'll only have to miss me for a whole 24 hours, but I won't be in tomorrow. Stand by for Mr. Max to take over the reins. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to George in London.
Good morning, Kevin. I don't know if you heard J.D. Vance when he's commentating. He said it's wrong that American people are competing with they call them illegal aliens for housing. We're not even competing. They are coming first. Everywhere on housing. Now, I'm talking to a guy. We belong to the same health club. He's from Dubai. He's got business in Dubai. He said we in the Middle East are a complete laughing stock.
We're the laughing stock of the world with our immigration policy.
Actually, he was going to say. He said in Dubai. He said we don't let anyone in. You've got to come in Dubai, Saudi, any of these countries, the United Arab Emirates, unless you've got a job and you've got a lot of money, you're not getting in there. And he said, all you've got to do, he said, it's so simple. He said, just stop the benefits. Stop the benefits, they stop coming. We spend 50 grand a year on benefits. We've done up to 2.2 million legal immigrants came in the last 3 years. Apparently only 18% are working. So how many billions is that costing?
Yeah, well, these migrants, particularly the illegals, but also the legals, they don't add up. I mean, the idea of bringing in migrants is they become economically creative and they improve the economy, but it's been calculated that most of these people are costing us more than they are worth. So you're absolutely right. It's a disaster.
They're costing us absolutely billions. And I keep saying it. No benefits of any description of anything until you paid 100 grand in taxes through work, national insurance contribution. If you don't like it, don't come here. If you are here, you've got 3 months to get a job. No job, you are out. Exactly what Trump said he's going to do.
You mean if they come legally?
Legally or illegally?
No. You can't say to illegals, you've got 3 months to get a job. What we have to say to illegals is you can't have a job.
Shouldn't be here at all.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't say to the illegals, get yourself a job, because that would mean they can stay.
And the legals, you've got 3 months to get a job. They're now. And I remember saying 50 grand. You say, oh, that's a lot, mate. It's not. In 2 years. That's 2 years. Some of them have never worked ever. They've been years and years and years. It is a joke what is going on.
Well, what we should do about the legals, given that something like 1.75 million, nearly 2 million have come in over the last 2 years, what we should do with them is what we should have done is not let them in the first place.
Well, stop the benefits. I mean, do you remember when they...
How do you do that, George? How do you do it?
We just don't give them benefits. France don't give them...
Well, just say you're foreign, you can't have benefits.
No, exactly, until you pay a certain amount of money. In France...
Yeah, but that... OK, all right, OK. Well, I mean, I just wouldn't let them in the first place. No deals. You can't pay money just to stay. You're just not allowed in. That's what we need to do. We need to close our borders. It's as simple as that. This country is officially full. Our infrastructure is creaking at the seams. We can't take any more people. George, good point, though. Thank you for the call. Call again. George in London. Petri Hoskin is in the studio. Hi, Petri.
Hello there. How was the staff party?
I don't know. Didn't go.
Oh, shocking. I just wondered if there was any gossip.
Well,
nobody's telling me anything.
Well, I did hear a story, but I better tell you off air.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. Right, coming up, I'm doing a sort of an homage. This evening, because this is my last show before Christmas, and I wanted to dedicate the show to Howard Hughes. So I'm going to dedicate the entire show to him because In the first hour
Poor
of the show,
old Howard, yeah.
we are going to be examining, in depth, the drones.
Yeah, it's
And
great.
I've got all sorts of people, some conspiracy theorists, some scientists who are going to talk to me through what's going on with these drones, because something very strange is going on. There's no doubt about it. Is it alien? I don't think so, but something's going on.
Well, in America, they're about 5,000.